"Mom says you're just visiting," Leo whispered, pulling the blanket up to his chin. His voice was soft, unsure, but it carried a truth heavier than he understood. I smiled, smoothed his hair, and said, "Then I'll be the kind of visitor who remembers. If you're listening, subscribe and tell me where you're from. My name is Dorothy Hanley, and I'm 72 years old. For most of my life I worked as a librarian in a small town outside Portland, the kind of place where people still whisper out of habit, and every book has a story beyond its pages. When my husband, Walter, passed away 3 years ago, the silence in our house grew louder than any library I'd ever known. My son Michael called often back then, his voice always gentle, always hurried. "Mom, you should come stay with us for a while," he said one evening. "It'll be good for Leo to have you around." I said yes because I missed them, and because yes was easier than being alone. Their home sat on a hill overlooking the valley. 2 stories, wide windows, everything neat and modern. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, kept it running like a clock. She was efficient, kind in public, but always planning 3 steps ahead of everyone else. When I arrived, she hugged me tightly, said, "You can use the guest room, Mom," and smiled in a way that felt both genuine and measured. I brought 2 suitcases, a box of books, and a framed photo of Walter. "Just a few things," I said. She nodded. "We'll find space." The first weeks were warm. Mornings began with Leo at the table, cereal scattered around his bowl, sunlight catching the curls on his head. He'd ask me to tell stories about when Dad was my age. I told him about the time Michael tried to build a treehouse that leaned so badly even the birds refused to land on it. Vanessa would laugh politely from across the kitchen, already checking her planner. Michael worked long hours at the hospital, so evenings were quiet me. And reading, Vanessa typing on her laptop, Leo drawing dragons on the floor beside us. I felt useful again, the way I used to when Walter and I ran the library events together. I cooked dinner twice a week, baked muffins on Sundays, and helped Leo with his reading. Vanessa thanked me often, but in the same tone one might thank a helpful neighbor. Still, I believed kindness didn't need ownership. Family, I thought, was about filling small gaps, not claiming space. I told myself this each time Vanessa rearranged the cabinets or labeled the pantry shelves. Michael was grateful. "Mom, you being here takes so much off our plate," he said one night while loading the dishwasher. I smiled. "That's what mothers do," I said. But I noticed he never called it your home, always our house. I brushed it off as habit, not meaning. Then little changes began. Vanessa replaced the bedding in my room, saying the colors felt too dark. She moved my books to a single shelf in the hallway for easier cleaning. When I offered to pay a share of the utilities, she waved her hand. "Oh, don't worry about that. Just enjoy your stay." Stay, the word lingered. I told myself not to be sensitive, that modern families simply function differently. Yet there were moments small, fleeting, when I felt like a guest in a place I had helped build. Once, while setting the table, Vanessa said, "You really don't have to do that every night, Mom. We've got it." I smiled, sat down, and folded my napkin in half. She didn't notice, but Leo did. He leaned against my arm and whispered, "Grandma, I like it when you help." That whisper stayed with me. So did the smell of cinnamon from the muffins, the sound of the dishwasher humming at night, and the quiet gratitude that still made me feel part of something. I believed, for a while, that was enough, that being near the people you love is its own kind of belonging. It was a Saturday morning in early spring when the first real crack appeared. Sunlight fell through the kitchen blinds in thin stripes, and I was sorting laundry at the table. Vanessa came in holding a clipboard and a mug that read, "Plan, do, achieve." She smiled the way people do before delivering news. "We're doing a little reorganization this weekend," she said. "Michael and I thought it might be good to free up some space." I nodded, thinking she meant the garage. Then I saw the moving boxes stacked by the hallway, all labeled Mom's things. I looked at the handwriting. It was hers, neat and blue. "You packed my books," I said quietly. "Only the extras," she replied. "We're turning your room into a home office. It's just more practical." She said it like an equation she'd already solved. "And where should I stay?" I asked. "Oh, we'll set up the den for you," she said. "It's temporary, of course." That afternoon, I stood in the den surrounded by folded blankets and stacked boxes. The window was smaller, the air cooler. My photo of Walter leaned against a lamp instead of hanging on the wall. When Michael came home, I asked him, "Did you know about this change?" He hesitated. "Vanessa mentioned it, yeah. She's been working from home more. It's only fair she has her space." He smiled weakly. "We'll make it comfortable for you, Mom." I didn't answer. Fairness, I thought, often depends on who writes the rules. That night, as I tucked Leo into bed, he looked at me with wide eyes. "Mom says you're just visiting," he whispered. "But you've been here a long time." I smiled, forcing calm. "Sometimes visits last longer than we expect." "I hope you stay," he said, yawning. "I like when you read to me." I kissed his forehead and said, "Me too, sweetheart." But when I walked back to my new room, the word visiting followed me down the hall like a shadow that didn't belong to me. The next morning, while making coffee, I noticed an envelope. On the counter marked household records, property authorization. I didn't touch it right away. The paper looked official, with lines for signatures and a header from a realty office I didn't recognize. When I finally picked it up, I saw Michael's name filled in, mine blank. Under ownership, someone had written, "Pending adjustment." I folded the page and placed it inside my recipe book without saying a word. Later that week, I found my small lockbox drawer half empty. My savings ledger was missing a notebook where I'd tracked deposits, utilities, and small transfers from my pension. When I asked Vanessa, she said, "Oh, I think Michael took it to the office for record keeping. He's just trying to help." I nodded slowly, pretending to believe her. That evening, I checked my bank balance online, something I hadn't done in months. 2 automatic withdrawals had gone through that I didn't recognize, one for $180, another for $240. Both marked consulting fee. The next day, I called the bank, pretending I was confused. "Can you tell me who authorized those transactions?" I asked. The clerk hesitated, then said, "They were confirmed through your online portal, ma'am." "I don't use online banking," I said quietly. There was silence. "Would you like me to email the authorization log?" she asked. "No," I said. "I'll come by in person." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Leo's voice. "Mom says you're just visiting." Maybe that was how it started. A seed planted through small choices, growing roots while I stayed polite. I lay awake staring at the ceiling and thought about Walter. He'd handled everything through paper and patience. "Trust doesn't vanish," he used to say, "but it does fade if you don't dust it once in a while." I realized I hadn't dusted mine in years. By the end of that week, I made a quiet decision. I would stop asking questions and start writing things down. If they wanted to treat me like a visitor, then I would act like one who kept records polite, invisible, but observant. I found a small spiral notebook in my purse, the kind I used at the library for inventory notes, and wrote on the first page, April 14, boxes labeled, Mom's Things, ledger missing. Authorization form on counter. I underlined the word authorization twice. The next morning, Vanessa handed me a grocery list. "Could you pick these up while you're out?" she asked, smiling. "Of course," I said. I took the list, walked to the car, and drove not to the store, but to the bank. The sky was gray that morning, low clouds pressing down on the quiet streets. I parked in front of Heritage Credit Union, the same bank Walter and I had used since our first mortgage. The teller recognized me, a young woman named Felicia, with warm eyes and quick hands. "Good morning, Mrs. Hanley," she said. "How can I help you today?" I smiled faintly. "I just need to check a few things on my account. There have been some odd charges." She pulled up my file, her expression shifting as she scrolled. "It looks like there was a change to your contact information last month," she said. "New email, new mailing address." "And what address does it show?" I asked. She read it aloud, "My son's home, not mine." I kept my face still. "Interesting," I said. "And who made that change?" "It was done online," she said. "It shows confirmation from your profile." "I don't use the computer for banking," I replied. She hesitated. "Would you like me to print the authorization log?" "Yes, please," I said. She printed several pages, slid them across the counter, and whispered, "You should talk to our manager about this." I nodded. "One more thing," I added. "Has anyone accessed my safe deposit box recently?" She checked, then frowned. "It was opened 2 weeks ago. Signature on file says M. Hanley." I took a slow breath. "That's my son," I said softly, but I didn't authorize him. Within minutes, the branch manager, Mr. Conway, came out to meet me. He was a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes. "Mrs. Hanley, let's go over this carefully," he said. In his office, I explained what had happened, the missing ledger, the online access, the new address. He listened, then said, "We can freeze the online account for now and require in-person ID for any future changes. I'll also note that your deposit box requires your signature only." "Please do that," I said. "And can you print a copy of the access log?" He nodded and handed me another set of papers, stamped and dated. I placed them carefully into my purse. My first truth prop. Before leaving, I asked one last question. "Can you tell me the exact time the box was opened?" He checked. "April 9, at 3:42 p.m. "Thank you," I said. I already knew where Vanessa had been that day. I'd seen her leaving early for an errand. Back home, I went straight to my room and opened the small jewelry box where I kept my spare safe key. The slot was empty. Someone had taken it. I sat down, folded my hands, and whispered, "All right, Walter, time to start dusting." Then I opened my notebook and wrote, April 9, deposit box opened, key missing, account address changed, freeze requested. That evening, when Vanessa came home, she looked surprised to see me in the kitchen. "You're home early," she said. "Traffic was light," I replied. She smiled, but her eyes darted toward my purse on the counter. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said calmly. "Just keeping things in order." She nodded and walked off, humming as if nothing were wrong. 2 days later, I visited the county records office. The clerk, a young man named Darren, asked what I needed. "Property ownership verification for the Hanley residence and the Hanley trust account," I said. He typed quickly, then turned the screen toward me. "No transfer filed, but there was an inquiry last week from a secondary user under the same surname. Can I get that in writing?" I asked. He printed the request log and stamped it. "This should do," he said. "Thank you," I said softly. "You've been very helpful." My second truth prop. Back at home, I hid both documents inside an old copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, Walter's favorite. Between its pages, I slipped a note, "Keep calm. Paper remembers what people forget." Then I brewed tea, sat by the window, and watched Leo playing in the yard. He waved when he saw me, his laughter bright against the growing tension inside the house. I waved back, grateful he didn't know any of this. That night, after everyone went to bed, I checked my notebook again. I'd filled 6 pages in a week, dates, names, small clues. I added one more entry before closing it. April 21. Visit from Heritage Bank complete. 2 truth props secured. No confrontation yet. As I turned off the lamp, I thought about my next step. I needed someone who understood the fine print better than I did, someone who could read the law as easily as I could read a library catalog. The next morning, I called Helen Brooks. Helen Brooks arrived the next afternoon, her gray hair pulled back in a clip, her eyes sharp behind gold-rimmed glasses. She still carried herself like the paralegal she'd once been, measured, precise, and with a kind of quiet authority that made people straighten their backs. We hadn't seen each other in a few months, but she hugged me as if she already knew I needed it. "You said you had something to show me," she said, setting her handbag on the table. "Let's see what kind of trouble they've stirred." I spread the papers across the table, the bank audit log, the records from the county office, the authorization form I'd found in the kitchen. She read every line slowly, her finger tracing each entry. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair. "They overplayed their hand," she said calmly. "These changes can't stand without notarized consent. It's all reversible." I exhaled, my hands still trembling a little. "So I'm not crazy." "You're cautious," she said. That's the word men use to avoid giving women credit. Helen stayed for 2 hours, explaining every detail: how to write a statement of ownership, how to certify documents, how to make sure I stayed one step ahead. She brought out her notebook and drew a small checklist. 1. Document every irregularity. 2. Make copies of all originals and keep them somewhere off-site. 3. If they escalate, go through the bank manager first, not your family. I nodded, scribbling notes like one of her students. "You're doing everything right, Dorothy," she said gently. "Just stay calm. Facts don't need volume to be heard." Before she left, she opened her purse and pulled out a form. This is a declaration of asset protection. Fill it out, sign, and get it notarized at the bank. It'll create a legal timestamp showing that your intent never changed. That's simple? I asked. Simple is what most people overlook, she replied. That's why it works. I walked her to the porch. She paused before getting into her car. You know, she said, Vanessa probably believes she's helping, just not for the right reasons. Some people confuse efficiency with entitlement. I smiled faintly. I'll remember that. Good, she said. And when the time comes, don't argue present. Then she winked, the same way she did when we used to handle difficult library donors together years ago. That evening, I filled out the declaration, double-checked the spelling of every word, and signed my name carefully, the way Walter used to on his contracts. The next morning, I took it to the bank, had it notarized, and requested an official duplicate. I sealed one copy in an envelope labeled Legal DH and placed it beneath the documents in To Kill a Mockingbird. The other, I tucked into my purse. When I got home, I found Vanessa at the kitchen counter, talking on her phone. She looked up briefly. Everything okay, Mom? Perfectly, I said. She smiled politely and went back to her call. I went to my room, opened my notebook, and wrote, April 23, Helen reviewed documents. Declaration notarized. Calm remains strategy. Then I underlined strategy twice. I wasn't planning to fight anymore. I was preparing to win quietly. The pressure built slowly, like water rising beneath a closed door. It began with polite changes, small, tidy, explainable. Vanessa asked if she could help streamline my finances. You've got so many accounts, Mom, she said lightly one morning. Let me just link them together so we don't miss payments. I smiled and said, I think I'll keep my system. Her lips curved into a professional smile. Of course, just offering. But that evening, I noticed the shared family laptop open to my bank portal. I didn't say a word. I simply closed it, logged out, and changed my password at the branch the next morning. 2 days later, she suggested I spend a few weeks at a senior retreat while they reorganized the house. I thanked her for thinking of me and said I preferred to stay close to Leo's school. You'd love it there, she insisted. They do morning yoga and watercolor. I do fine with my crossword and tea, I said. The conversation ended, but something colder replaced it, distance disguised as respect. From that week forward, I became the invisible member of the household. They stopped asking what I wanted for dinner. Vanessa planned gatherings without mentioning me until the day of. Even Leo began pausing before inviting me to read, as if checking invisible permission. I didn't blame him. Children adjust to the tone of a room long before they understand the reason. Each night, after they went upstairs, I wrote in my spiral notebook, May 4, email attempt to merge accounts blocked. May 6, suggested senior retreat declined. May 7, overheard Vanessa saying, she's getting forgetful. I numbered each note, cross-referenced the dates, and attached small receipts, doctor visits, utility bills, notes from the bank. My handwriting, still steady after all these years, gave me comfort. Walter used to say, as long as your pen works, you're in control. The next Monday, I returned to Heritage Credit Union to meet with Mr. Conway again. How are you holding up, Mrs. Hanley? He asked. Like a patient gardener, I said, waiting for weeds to reveal their roots. I handed him my notebook and the copy of Helen's notarized declaration. He read through them carefully. You're thorough, he said. This will protect you. If anyone attempts another unauthorized change, the system will flag it immediately. I nodded. That's all I wanted, a record that listens even when people don't. By mid-May, the tension at home became almost rehearsed. Vanessa began to correct my small habits. Mom, we don't leave dishes to air dry here. Mom, let's not clutter the counter. Mom, you already told that story. Each time, I smiled and stepped aside. I had already learned the value of not interrupting someone who's writing her own downfall. One afternoon, I heard her on the phone again, speaking softly but clearly. Yes, we're managing her affairs now, she said. Everything's moving smoothly. I stood in the hallway, recording the date and time in my mind before walking into the kitchen. Who were you talking to? I asked gently. She startled, then smiled. Just the insurance office, Mom. Nothing important. Good, I said. I do like things that stay unimportant. That evening I phoned Helen. There Tightening their circle, I said. Then make yours smaller and stronger, she replied. Keep one duplicate set of everything outside that house. The next morning, I went to the post office and rented a small safety box under my name. I placed inside it the following: the bank audit logs, the county records printout, my notarized declaration, and 3 months of transaction statements. When I locked the box, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. At home, the energy shifted again. Vanessa began holding what she called family budgeting meetings. Michael attended, distracted, checking his phone between topics. She presented charts and spreadsheets, her voice confident. We just want transparency, she said. Everyone knows where the money goes. Wonderful idea, I said. Would you like me to bring my records too? She hesitated. Oh, that's not necessary, I said softly. The next evening, I left my notebook visible on the counter, open to a page that read, May 22, unauthorized inquiry to Heritage Bank under M. Hanley, confirmed and reversed. After that, her tone changed. More cautious, less cheerful. She started locking her home office door, something she'd never done before. I noted that too. By early June, the air in the house felt like glass, polished, reflective, fragile. We spoke kindly but never deeply. When I passed her in the hall, she smiled too quickly, and I smiled back with the same measured politeness. Leo was the only light that stayed steady. We read every night before bed. His favorite story was about a tree that remembered every name carved into it. One night, after finishing the story, he looked at me and asked, Grandma, can trees really remember? I said, only the good ones. That night, I made one more entry. June 5. Patience tested, evidence complete, truth waiting. Then I closed the notebook and slid it beside the copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. I decided that the next family dinner would be the right moment to open both. Sunday dinners had always been my favorite, even when they turned complicated. That week, Vanessa texted, family dinner at 6, casual. I smiled when I read the word family. I made lemon, chicken, and roasted vegetables, careful and slow, the way Walter liked them. When I set the table, I added one small detail, my spiral notebook at my place, the pages folded neatly under my reading glasses. Vanessa came down dressed like she was hosting a seminar. Crisp blouse, perfect hair, a calm confidence that told me she had rehearsed something. Michael followed, rubbing his temples. Leo ran in with a smile, setting napkins beside each plate. This looks great, Grandma, he said. It does, Vanessa replied smoothly, pouring water. Let's start early, since there are a few things to clarify. I waited until she unfolded her papers. Charts, typed outlines, a folder labeled Household Adjustments. She began with a voice that could have narrated a commercial. Mom, I've been reviewing some of your accounts and expenses. I think it would help if we consolidated just for efficiency. She slid a paper toward me. This authorizes joint management. You'd keep oversight, of course. I looked down. My name was typed neatly at the top, already paired with hers. You've done a lot of work, I said softly. I try to keep things organized, she said. I know numbers can get confusing. For some people, I replied, folding the page once and setting it aside. Michael shifted in his seat. Vanessa, maybe we should. It's fine, I said. I reached for my notebook, opened it slowly, and placed a few printed pages beside it. Since we're talking about organization, let's be thorough. Vanessa blinked, unsure. I began to read, my tone even, almost gentle. April 9th deposit box opened under my son's name, without authorization. April 14th, online banking. Changes recorded, later reversed. April 21st property inquiry, logged by a secondary user, surname Hanley. I stopped and looked up. I assume that was part of your consolidation plan? Her face flushed slightly. Mom, I think you're misunderstanding. Am I? I slid the stamped county record toward her. I asked for a printout at the clerk's office. They were very helpful. Michael leaned forward. What's going on? He asked, his voice low. I'd like to know that myself, I said. It seems someone's been quite ambitious with paperwork that isn't theirs. Vanessa's tone cracked, just a little. I was only trying to help. You've been so tired lately, and you thought tired meant blind? I interrupted, calm but steady. I may read slower these days, but I still read. She looked down, silent. Michael turned to me, eyes wide with confusion. "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I wanted to be sure," I said. "I've learned that truth without proof just sounds like opinion." I reached into my bag and pulled out the notarized declaration Helen had helped me prepare. "This," I said, laying it gently between us, "is my legal statement of ownership, dated and certified. It affirms that I remain the sole holder of my assets and property. No changes can be made without my signature. This one." I tapped the bottom where my name was written in careful blue ink. The room went still except for Leo's quiet humming from the living room. Vanessa looked pale now, her confidence draining into something almost human. "You went to the bank?" she asked softly. "And the records office, and a notary." I smiled. "It's remarkable how much you can accomplish when people assume you're just visiting." Michael exhaled, rubbing his face. "Vanessa, tell me this isn't what it looks like." "I was trying to organize," she said weakly. "For the family." "By erasing part of it?" I asked. She swallowed, blinking fast. "I didn't mean—" "I know," I said gently. "Intentions are easy. Integrity takes effort." I gathered the papers, stacked them neatly, and slid them into my folder. "I'm not angry," I said quietly, "but this house will not run on secrecy. I've changed my accounts, reset every access code, and filed a legal note with Heritage Credit Union. From now on, if either of you needs clarification, ask me directly. Otherwise, we keep separate ledgers, yours for your life, mine for mine." Michael nodded slowly. "That's fair." Vanessa didn't speak. She kept her gaze on the untouched dinner plate, as if the pattern there could rewrite what had just happened. I stood, carried the lemon chicken to the counter, and said, "Let's eat while it's warm." The tension thinned but didn't vanish. We passed dishes quietly, the air thick with unspoken things. Leo ran back in halfway through, holding one of his drawings, a tall tree covered in names. "This is our family tree," he said proudly. "Everyone's on it." I looked at the branches, each name scrawled in bright crayon. Mine was still there, near the roots. I smiled and kissed his forehead. "Keep it that way," I whispered. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen. The dishes were clean, the papers packed away. Outside, the porch light glowed faintly. I wrote one more line in my notebook before closing it for good. June 11. Confrontation complete. Truth settled quietly, as it should. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was still, the way it used to be when I'd rise early for work at the library. I brewed coffee and sat by the kitchen window, the light just beginning to touch the curtains. The calm didn't feel empty this time. It felt earned. At 7 sharp, Michael came downstairs, dressed for work, holding a folder under his arm. He hesitated when he saw me. "You're up early," he said softly. "Old habits," I replied. "Did you sleep?" He nodded, then shook his head. "Not much. Mom, I didn't realize how far things had gone." "You see it now," I said. "That's enough." He placed the folder on the table. "I called the bank this morning. They confirmed your authority and said the online access has been reset. Vanessa won't have administrative privileges anymore." I nodded, stirring my coffee. "Good. That should settle the confusion." He exhaled slowly, eyes tired but sincere. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have protected you sooner." I looked at him, the same boy who once climbed trees too high and cried when he couldn't get down. "You were busy trying to protect everyone," I said. "But some lessons need quiet consequences." Later that morning, Vanessa came downstairs. No polished tone this time, no confident stride. She stood in the doorway holding 2 mugs of tea. "I made chamomile," she said quietly. "I thought we could talk." I gestured toward the table. "Sit." She did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I want to apologize. Truly, I overstepped. I thought I was helping, but I see now it wasn't my place." I nodded slowly. "You were managing what you didn't understand. That's a dangerous habit." She looked down. "I was afraid," she said softly. "Afraid of losing control. That's how most harm begins," I said. We sat in silence, the only sound the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now," I said, "we move forward with boundaries." I slid a printed form across the table, a notarized document Peter Latham, the family lawyer, had helped me prepare the day before. This simply states that I maintain full autonomy over my finances and property, I explained. It also grants shared access to emergency funds for Leo's education, under my discretion. Her eyes widened slightly. You're still helping us? Of course, I said. Helping isn't the problem. Assuming is. She nodded, tears filling her eyes, but she blinked them away. I understand. Good, I said. Then we'll be fine. I reached across the table and touched her hand briefly. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the start of something close. By afternoon, the rhythm of the house began to reset. Michael left for work. Vanessa cleaned quietly, humming under her breath. Leo came home from school carrying a drawing of a boat. It's for you, Grandma, he said. It's called The Safe Place. I smiled. It's perfect. He grinned. Mom helped me draw the water. I looked at her, and for the first time in months, she didn't look defensive. She looked relieved. That evening, I took a slow walk down the neighborhood path. The azaleas were blooming, their scent thick in the air. I thought about the months behind me, the shifting tones, the quiet battles, the proof I had gathered one page at a time. Truth had done its work, silently, but completely. Walter would have approved. He'd always said, "Real justice doesn't need applause, it just needs daylight." The following week, I met Helen for lunch at the little cafe near the courthouse. She smiled when she saw me. "Well," she said, "you look lighter." "It's finished," I said. "For now." She laughed. "That's all justice ever is, a pause between storms." I told her about the new documents, the boundaries set, and Vanessa's apology. "Good," she said. "You gave her a line to step back from. That's better than giving her none." I nodded. I wanted peace, not payback. "And you got it," she said. "On paper, no less." When I returned home that afternoon, the house smelled like cinnamon. Vanessa had baked a pie. "For you," she said, almost shyly. "I found one of your recipes in the box, the one labeled, Walter's favorite." I smiled. "You read my handwriting?" "I'm learning to," she said softly. That night, I took my notebook from the drawer. I opened it to the last page and wrote, June 18, accounts restored, apology accepted, order returned. I closed it gently and placed it beside the framed photo of Walter. He was smiling in that quiet way he always did when a lesson had finally landed. Some truths, I realized, don't need to echo. They just need to stand. 6 months later, the world had softened again. I now live in a small cottage, 10 minutes from Michael's house, close enough for Sunday dinners, far enough for everyone to breathe. The place is modest, just 2 rooms and a porch that catches the afternoon Sunday. The neighbors wave when I water my plants. Inside, everything is in its place. The kettle, my notebook, the photograph of Walter smiling in his flannel shirt. Leo visits every weekend. He bursts through the door, carrying a new drawing or a library book. Last week, he handed me one that showed a tree with deep roots and wide branches. "That's us," he said proudly. "You're the roots, Grandma." I laughed and hugged him. "Then I guess I'll keep growing strong." Vanessa comes with him sometimes now. She brings groceries, sometimes flowers. Her voice is softer, her smile real. Once, while we washed dishes together, she said quietly, "I didn't realize how much I still had to learn about family." I nodded. "We all keep learning, dear. Some lessons just take longer." Michael calls every evening after work. We talk about simple things, the weather, Leo's school, new books. There's no tension now, only steady care. The house feels peaceful, and for the first time in years, I sleep through the night without checking locks or ledgers. I still keep my records, though old habits die slow. Proof, after all, is not about mistrust, it's about memory. Sometimes I sit on the porch at dusk, watching the light fade over the trees. "I think about that night," Leo whispered. "Mom says you're just visiting." He was right, in a way. I was visiting, but not them. I was visiting a part of myself I'd forgotten. The quiet woman who doesn't shout to be heard, who lets paper and patience speak. I pour a cup of tea, turn on the small lamp, and open To Kill a Mockingbird. Inside, between the pages, my truth props still rest. The audit logs, the declarations, the notes that held my world steady when words could not. I keep them not out of fear, but gratitude. They remind me that grace can be written down too. Thanks for listening. Share your story in the comments, your voice matters.